Welcome to round 9 of NASAT 2018. I am Ophir Lipschitz, and this is
Chris.
The team on my left is Pennsylvania Blue, and the team on my right is Pennsylvania Gold. Right? And we're going to get started with toss-up 1. The Quran discusses the teaching of black magic to mankind in this place by the fallen angels Harut and Marut. In this place, the academies of Surah and Pumbedita arose to create the Gaonic period. In a Jewish community from this region, Anilai and Asinai founded a robber state near Nehardea. The Rosh Hagolah led Jews in this place, where Rav Ashi compiled a namesake Talmud. From the start of the diaspora to the late Middle Ages, this area was the center of Jewish scholarship. In the Ayaric speech of Rastafarians, this place's name is a shorthand for corrupt, worldly institutions.
Babylon?
Yes. Yep. Bonus, the Swiss theologian Hans Urs von Balthasar wrote a tract asking, "Dare we hope for this possibility?" for 10 points each. Give this Christian theological position that holds that all people are reconciled to God after death. A denomination was founded through the union of the Unitarians and holders of this position. Answer?
Irredentism?
Universalism.
Oh.
Evangelical pastor Rob Bell drew controversy after writing a book that claimed that we should hope universalism is true, titled "This Thing Wins." According to the Gospels, when asked which is the greatest commandment, Jesus replied that it is to do this to God with all your heart, and to do this to your neighbor as yourself.
Love.
John Calvin advanced this highly anti-universalist position, which holds that God personally foreordains not only who will be saved, but who will be condemned to hell.
Predestination.
Yes, for 20. Just make sure this doesn't get bumped all the time. Right. Toss-up 2. A character in this book describes how I inclined to Cain's heresy. I let my brother go to the devil in his own way. A Sawbones in this novel, who is as emotional as a bagpipe, turns sick and white with the desire to kill another character in this novel. In a full statement at the end of this novel, one of the central characters describes how Poole was unable to find any salt in London and mourns the last time he can think his own thoughts or see his own face, now how sadly altered in the glass. Richard Enfield goes on frequent walks with Gabriel Utterson in this book.
Oh.
Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Yes.
Okay.
Your bonus, counterstains used in this method include safranin for 10 points each. Give this method of staining, which classifies bacteria into namesake positive or negative classes.
Gram staining.
Gram-positive bacteria stain this color after a gram stain, whereas gram-negative bacteria show up as pink.
Purple.
Purple.
All bacteria in this phylum are gram-negative. This phylum contains bacteria that are corkscrew-shaped and includes Leptospira and Borrelia.
Spirulina.
Spirochaeta.
Yeah.
What?
So, 20 points. Toss-up 3. The Tepe Yahya site in present-day Iran was a training center for this material in the 3rd millennium BC, and a headless Idi Ilum statue of the governor of Mari was made of this material. This material was used to create a set of up to 1,000 statues that the king was ritually prohibited from viewing, and which usually held a knife in the lap, generally ranging from 1 to 2 feet tall. Those figurines made from this material were likely manufactured by the Oba kingdom and were found mostly defaced in the Yoruba town of Esiye.
Ivory.
Nope. Emissaries of the god Muari were represented in this material, which was used for a set of 8 4-foot sculptures discovered by Karl Mauch and created by the ancestral Shona people. For 10 points, name this soft rock used to carve the Zimbabwe birds found at Great Zimbabwe.
Sandstone.
No, soapstone.
Okay. Where are you gonna get that?
Toss-up 4. Mutation of the receptor for this hormone causes Donahue syndrome. Mutations in either this hormone or KCJN11 causes the permanent neonatal version of this disease. Of one disease, sorry. Yeah. Cone snails use a version of this hormone as venom. Its receptor is downregulated by PTPN1. This hormone's receptor activates IRS1, which in turn activates PI3 kinase and PKB. Growth hormone triggers the release of a growth factor similar to this hormone, also called somatomedin C. This hormone, 6 molecules of which are coordinated to zinc in a vesicle, has derivatives called glargine and detemir. A lack of this hormone can cause ketoacidosis, and this hormone increases.
It's like insulin.
Yes.
No.
These objects are cut into joints and embedded in jelly and are found alongside pies, fruits, and the necks of 4 bottles. For 10 points each, name these objects that a character had the forethought to bring on her trip and in which Loiseau wants to partake.
Wait, food?
Answer: 2 whole chickens. The title sex worker shares those chickens on a stagecoach in this short story. The other passengers are angry with her for not offering herself to a Prussian officer so they can continue on their journey. Ball of Fat was written by this French author who also wrote about a woman working for years to pay back some jewelry she broke without knowing it, but it was actually cheap, the necklace. 20. 5. This action was a response to a meeting at Trebur which announced a 1-year time limit. Conrad II and Bertha of Savoy participated in this journey, which involved a crossing of Mont Cenis due to easier passes through the Alps being closed by hostile Swabians. In 1872, Otto von Bismarck proclaimed that we will not reenact this action, which ended at a castle owned by Matilda of Tuscany.
Oh, like the walk to Canossa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chicago native Florence Ziegfeld was inspired by the Folies Bergère of Paris to begin his own show, the Ziegfeld Follies. For 10 points each, Ziegfeld's first taste of show business came when his father opened a nightclub to cash in on this 1893 extravaganza that sought to show a Midwestern city's recovery from an 1871 fire.
The 1893 Columbian Exposition, or the Chicago World's Fair.
Yes. Ziegfeld's first success came when managing Eugen Sandow, a pioneer of this activity. Angelo Siciliano changed his name to Charles Atlas after developing a system for performing this activity.
Bodybuilding.
Ziegfeld housed the premiere of Showboat in his namesake theater on Broadway, which was financed by this man who published the New York Journal and lost a 1906 race for New York's mayoralty.
Hearst.
Yes.
Good 30. Ooh, nice.
Fair catch. That's for getting 30 on the bonus and not dabbing. Also 6. This quantity in RDE can be modeled as proportional to the 2/3 power of the diffusion coefficient according to the Levitt equation, and staircase and linear sweep are common methods used to measure this quantity. In Efimenko's equations, magnetic field can be calculated by integrating the time-retarded density of this quantity. Yes. Bonus. This philosopher wrote about ordering every item on the menu in a restaurant in Marseille in his unfinished collection on hashish. For 10 points each, name this German-Jewish philosopher who also left his monumental arcades project unfinished. His theses on the philosophy of history were published in his Illuminations collection.
Feuerbach.
Walter Benjamin. One of Walter Benjamin's early essays was on the task of this sort of person. Benjamin attempted this role when he set out to render Proust in German.
Translating.
This earlier German philosopher argued that one should only translate into one's own language. He was the first thinker to assert that thought depends on language, and wrote a treatise on the origin of language in 1772.
Goethe.
Johann Gottfried von Herder. So, 10 points.
Make sure you listen to understand. He was trying to say stuff to you last time. Okay? That's it.
Yes, 10 points on the bonus.
No, we.
Yeah. Speak up.
Toss-up 7. Larry Rivers described being inspired by reading War and Peace to paint an updated version of a scene by this artist. Pendant portraits of Daniel Boone and Captain McClark flank a version of a mural by this artist, in the background of which 2 men climb a rock stack to raise a flag. Worthington Whitteridge posed as the central man of one of this artist's paintings while studying with him in Dusseldorf. Yes.
Nice. That was a guess. That was a good guess.
A character with this name abandons her fiancé Stoltius for the dissolute nobleman des Ports during the first Ricercari in Bernd Alois Zimmermann's opera Die Soldaten, which is based on a play by Jakob Lenz. For 10 points each, identify this first name of the woman who was murdered under a blood-red moon in an invention on a single note from another opera.
Tosca.
Marie. The latter Marie appears in this Alban Berg opera based on a play by Georg Büchner. Its title character is inflamed with jealousy after seeing Marie dancing with a drum major.
Wojtek.
Yes, as a member of the Second Viennese School, Berg was a student of this composer who applied his 12-tone system to create operas like Moses und Aram.
Schoenberg.
Yes. 20. The first monastery of this denomination was built by Padma Sambhava at Semye. That monk from this religion supposedly meditated for 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, and 3 hours in a cave near its Tiger's Nest monastery. This religion teaches that wisdom kings live in the womb realm. Most people in the Russian Republic of Kalmykia follow this religion, whose practitioners create colored mandalas out of sand.
This is Tibetan Buddhism.
Yes.
Good.
In this author's collection, More Pricks Than Kicks, Belakwa Shua struggles with the prospect of killing a lobster, for 10 points each. Named this author of a novel in which Murphy dreams about Belakwa. Malone dies and is part of a trilogy of novels he wrote while in Paris.
Beckett.
Samuel Beckett was intrigued by the late lazy lute maker Belakwa, who appears in this section of a larger poem. In this section, the protagonist makes his way up 7 terraces of a mountain, the entrance to which is guarded by Cato the Younger. Answer?
Say it.
It's Purgatorio. This British writer created the character of Lyra Belakwa in his series His Dark Materials.
Coleman.
For 20. This event triggered a 16-month debate in the House of Lords that resulted in questioning of Lord Hoffman's impartiality and the triple decision of R.V. Bowstreet. The listed reasons for this event included the assassination of Carmelo Soria. In response to this event, Eduardo Frei ordered the temporary withdrawal of ambassadors from both Spain and the UK. This event was the first application of the universal jurisdiction principle and the first arrest of a person carrying a diplomatic passport in British history. This event occurred at London Bridge Hospital on October 17, 1998, in fulfillment of a Spanish warrant issued by Baltazar Garzón. For 10 points, identify this detention of a former Chilean dictator.
So Pinochet's imprisonment?
Um,
Or like arrest?
We'll rule on the first answer you gave, and that is not correct.
This is the arrest of Pinochet.
Yes.
Can I protest?
Sure. Here's your bonus. This man is a member of the McCoy family of Hatfield feud fame. For 10 points each, name this former Massey Energy CEO who was imprisoned for his role in the Upper Big Branch mine explosion and finished third in a May 2018 Senate primary behind Patrick Morrissey and Evan Jenkins.
John Blankenship.
I didn't know.
Blankenship was seeking the Republican nomination to oppose Joe Manchin in November in this state.
West Virginia.
In an April 2018 ad, Blankenship denounced the China family of the current Senate Majority Leader, whom Blankenship referred to by this 2-word nickname.
Cocaine Mitch.
Yeah, for 30.
Wait, we were talking about that last night.
What's what question was that?
Number 9.
That was, yes. It was bonus 8 and toss up 9. So the swing on that protest will be 40 plus 30, so 70. Okay. Toss up 10. This character carries around excerpts from Rasputin's writings with which he sympathizes. This character professionally models in the nude with a second job engraving tombstones.
Oscar.
Yes.
Also, wasn't the swing on that 80? Because they got 40 and we could have gotten 40.
There was no
Eighty-five.
neg.
It would be 80, because there was no neg. Yeah, you're right. It is 80. Sorry about that. So here's your bonus. Answer the following about private libraries in early colonial America for 10 points each. This clergyman bequeathed a generous library and a substantial part of his fortune to a college in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which led to it being named in his honor.
Oh, Harvard, yeah.
John Winthrop gave a copy of this Italian humanist Anglica Historia to Harvard College. Answer? Polydor Virgil. Historians have used this man's library to dispute claims that he was secretly a Catholic. This militia captain of the Plymouth Bay Colony founded the Massachusetts town of Duxbury.
Standish.
Yes, 20. Right, so that's halftime. We have one protest marked down.
It is currently Pennsylvania Blue 150, Pennsylvania Gold 125.
Yeah, make sure you listen to this side real quick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were up twice.
Yes, we've got the 2 toss ups. Of course, yeah.
And then they immediately.
Yeah. Right from that.
Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Olivier Messiaen used squiggly lines to indicate for this instrument to play a discolored sound of oscillating pitch in the interstellar call movement from the canyons to the stars. This instrument reprises its prologue in an offstage epilogue in a serenade that sets Keats to sleep and Blake's The Sick Rose. Alongside the tenor Peter Pierce, Dennis Brain played this instrument at the premiere of that serenade by Benjamin Britten. Brain also popularized the second of Richard Strauss's concerti for it. In various passages in The Rite of Spring, all 8 of these instruments are played bells up. They're...
French horn.
Yes.
I forgot what instrument Dennis Brain played.
The Super Kamiokande experiment has established a lower bound of 1.6 times 10 to the 34 years for the half-life of this process. For 10 points each, identify this hypothetical but currently unobserved process in which a common hadron decays into a neutral pion and a positron.
Proton decay.
Yes. Proton decay is predicted by the Georgi-Glashow model, which also predicts interactions that do not conserve this quantity, equal to 1/3 the number of quarks minus the number of antiquarks.
Oh, baryon number.
Baryon number? Sorry.
Protons, as well as other baryons, are composed of this many quarks.
3.
30 quarks.
Is that a 30?
Yes.
Another small.
This lake's refilling after desiccation in the Pleistocene marks the origin of its superflock of haplochromines. This lake is the subject of Hubert Sauper's documentary Darwin's Nightmare. Over 130 people live on this lake's 20,000 square foot Migingo Island. Its largest island, Ukerewe, is home to a community of albinos. Outflow from this lake supplies the Owen Falls Dam, and its primary inflow is the Kagera River. A perch species introduced to this lake.
Lake Victoria.
Yes.
Darn, I was reading that and looking and watch.
In a novel from this country, Nyai Ontosoro, the concubine of Herman Melema, becomes the mentor to a young writer named Minka. For 10 points each, in this Asian country where Pramudya Ananta Tour narrated stories to his prison cellmates that became This Earth of Mankind, the first volume of the Buru Quartet. Multatuli's Max Havelaar was also set here. Answer?
Thailand.
It's Indonesia. The wizened reporter quickly recounts the romance between the journalist Guy Hamilton and Jill Bryant in this Australian novelist, The Tear of Living Dangerously, in which the dwarf Billy Kwan expounds on the moral sense of Indonesian wayang kulit puppet plays.
Oh.
Answer?
White.
Christopher John Koch. The dangerous communist rallies in The Year of Living Dangerously resemble those that Baby Kochama suspects her Dalit servant Velutha of joining in The God of Small Things by this Indian writer.
Oh, Roy.
10. Toss-up 13. A thinker born in this country, Jolly Robinson, has promoted aspects of Indo-culture in this country, such as the Tong Tong Festival. Immigration to this European country became higher during the violent Bersiap period, after which many former members of the KNIL immigrated to this country. This country was the primary destination of refugees after the collapse of the Republic of South Maluku, and terrorist attacks by Moluccans in this country included an attempt to capture its queen, Juliana. The opposition to migrants to this country, which once operated the ethical policy, prompted the film Fitna to be made by the leader of its VVP.
So the Netherlands?
Yes.
Nice.
Name these creatures from South American folklore, 10 points each. In Brazil, a headless one of these animals was once a woman who had a sexual encounter with a priest and must now roam the countryside spewing fire from its neck.
Snake?
Mule. The Chilote people of South Chile believe that in the caves of Brujo, warlocks are protected by these deformed mute guardians created from kidnapped babies.
Golems.
Imbunches. This dragon may travel between the spiritual and physical worlds in Inca myth. This term was adopted as part of the name of several Inca leaders along with the name Tupac.
Amara.
Say it again?
Amaru.
Yes. For 10 points. Toss-up 14. This poet declared that the Greeks did not but play the fools and lie, let Greeks be Greeks. This poet concluded, farewell, dear mother, parliament prevail, and in a while you'll tell another tale, in a poem presented as an exchange between two geographic places. After a personal tragedy, this poet wrote about a place high erect, framed by that mighty architect, with glory richly furnished. This author wrote the line, "If ever two were one, then..." Say it again? Nope. Wrote the line, "If ever two were one, then surely we," and addressed another poem to "Thou ill-formed offspring of my feeble brain." This poet of a dialogue between Old England and New, and verses upon the burning of our house, addressed her output in the author to her book. For 10 points, named this Puritan poet whose poems were collected in the 10th Muse lately sprung up.
Bride Street.
Yes.
Sorry. Big ball.
Alright, your bonus.
I just thought like, oh, big ball.
The vocalist hums rather than sings during the reprise of the theme in this piece's first movement, which sets a poem by Ruth Correa, who premiered it, for 10 points each. Name this piece for the unusual ensemble of soprano and 8 cellos. Its 2 movements, which have a second parenthetical title in Portuguese, are Aria Cantilena and Danza Martello.
How many violas do you have? Villa-Lobos' first violin concerto.
Bachianas Brasileiras number 5. The aria of Bachianas Brasileira number 5 by Heitor Villa-Lobos is mostly in this time signature. Villa-Lobos used it in the languid middle section of the toccata Festa no Sertão from Ciclo Brasileiro to evoke the African-influenced rhythms of sertanejo or Brazilian country music.
Sure.
5-4.
Yes.
Nice.
Bach's influence on Bachianas Brasileiras is seen in the movements in this imitative contrapuntal form that begins with each voice playing the subject one after the other. Bach wrote a piece showing off the art of this form.
A few.
Yes.
Good job.
20.
Good 20.
Addition of triphenylphosphine oxide or porphyrin-based clathrates can increase the yield of this process. The domain size of the product of this process is proportional to growth velocity to the 1 over d plus 1 power, where d is the number of dimensions. The Avrami equation can be used to model the kinetics of this process, and a Craig tube can be used in small-scale versions of this technique. Floating zone and Czochralski methods are forms of this technique used to produce high-quality semiconductors. Pasteur performed chiral resolution of sodium tartrate during using this technique. Hot gravity filtration can be used to remove insoluble impurities prior to this technique. For 10 points, name this purification technique that results in the formation of ordered, solid products.
Precipitation.
No.
Crystallization.
Yes. For visual, yeah.
That was visual.
This event began during a student protest on November 17, 1989. For 10 points each, name this transfer of power that ended the one-party rule of Czechoslovakia's Communist Party.
Velvet Revolution.
This general secretary of the Czechoslovakian Communist Party resigned in November 1989 during the Velvet Revolution.
Defer.
Husuk.
It's Miloš Jakeš. The term Velvet Revolution was created by Rita Klimova, who served as the ambassador for Czechoslovakia to the United States and had this academic profession. Ernesto Zedillo and Luis Donaldo Colosio, 2 leading candidates in the 1994 Mexican presidential election, both had this profession.
Teacher.
Economist. 10.
Snacks.
Let's check the score after 15.
260, 140.
I have, 260, 140. PA Blue winning.
Okay. Toss up. Local number 1 of the International Workers of the World organized laborers in the production of this commodity. The organization Earth First held a national rendezvous to halt production of this commodity in the Cove Mallard area. In 1990, car bombing paralyzed an activist named Judy Berry, who led non-violent opposition to the production of this commodity during a set of namesake wars. The Clinton administration adopted a 1994 plan to promote sustainable use of this commodity in the Pacific Northwest. Some activists used methods such as spiking to prevent the harvest of this commodity. Endangered Species Act protections for the northern spotted owl heightened controversy over, for 10 points, the harvest of what commodity from forests?
Lumber.
Sure.
Lumber checking.
After one mathematician suggested a new method of doing this mathematical procedure to Gösta Mittag-Leffler, he responded by placing his hands on the works of Weierstrass and saying, "The master forbids it." 10 points each, name this mathematical procedure. Abel and Cesaro both named methods of performing this operation to divergent series, though more usually this would be denoted by a large sigma.
So like summation.
The aforementioned new method of summation was proposed by this French mathematician. The collection of his namesake sets forms a sigma algebra, and he is the second namesake of a theorem concerning a certain property of closed real intervals AB.
Defer.
Burrell.
The Heine-Borel theorem states that any closed interval AB has this topological property in the reals, which is usually defined as meaning that any open cover of this interval has a finite open subcover.
Compact.
Yeah,
That's like,
for 30. The ambidextrous Asteropeos throws 2 spears at once at this man, only to get graphically disemboweled for his trouble. This man defeats Simoeus and is aided when Hera and Hephaestus whip up a massive fire, and a general brawl breaks out among the...
like Achilles.
Yes.
Okay.
Rui Gonzalez de Clavijo, the Castilian ambassador to the city, recorded its continuous state of reconstruction. For 10 points each, named this transoxianan capital along the Silk Road that is home to a long-standing observatory and the Gur-e-Amir mausoleum.
Samarkand.
This Turkic conqueror, who is buried in the Gur-e-Amir, ruled his empire from Samarkand. This lame ruler built pyramids of skulls after sacking Baghdad and Delhi.
Tamerlane.
This grandson of Timur built his namesake observatory in Samarkand. Under this monarch's patronage, his astronomers published the incredibly accurate Zij-e-Sultani star charts.
Ulugh Beg.
30.
Good job.
Do we get another Smarties?
After the match. With Cauchy, a mathematician from this country names a theorem guaranteeing the local existence but not the uniqueness of a solution to the equation y prime equals f of x comma y, provided that f is continuous near the initial value. The proof of Montel's theorem relies on a theorem named for 2 men from this country, which guarantees a sequence of uniformly bounded equicontinuous functions that those will have a uniformly convergent subsequence on compact sets. The discoverer of the first space-filling curve and the namesake of the standard axioms that define the natural numbers was from this country. A theorem allowing double integrals to be flipped is named for a man from this country. 10 points. Name this home country of Giuseppe Peano and Guido Fubini.
Italy.
Yes.
Oh, wait, no.
This print was the basis for a bronze sculpture by pop artist Edoardo Paolozzi, found in the piazza outside the British Library. 10 points each. Name this monotype that depicts the title man naked, seated on a mossy rock while writing on a scroll with a compass.
Newton.
This British artist of Newton depicted Urizen crouching in front of the sun, holding a giant compass beneath him in the Ancient of Days, which originated as the frontispiece of his book, Europe, a Prophecy.
Blake.
Blake often colored his etchings using this method, in which paints are made from pigments suspended in an aqueous mixture.
Yeah. Watercolor.
30.
Good 30s.
There's 33 in a row.
The last poem in the first version of this collection opens by describing the concave womb of a hill. This collection's dedication, formatted to appear like a Roman inscription, is to the well-wishing adventurer in setting forth. The first section of this poem was possibly inspired by Henry Risley, who may be described by the line, "the master mistress of my passion." The first poem in this collection describes how beauty's rose might never die if from fairest creatures we desire increase. Another poem in this collection mentions that eternal summer shall not fade, but that rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. The poem, "Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer..."
Like Shakespeare's sonnet.
Yes. Answer the following questions about comets. A prevailing theory on their composition proposed by Fred L. Whipple compared their nucleus to this 2-word phrase.
What? Isn't it like ice?
Answer:
Frozen core?
dirty snowball. After breaking apart, this comet collided with Jupiter in 1994.
Shoemaker, let me know.
This comet, which is classified as a dwarf planet, orbits the Sun between Saturn and Uranus. It was also the first object classified as a centaur. Answer: it's Chiron. So 10 points. Last toss-up. In a 1980... What?
That was 10.
Yes. In a 1981 German film, this condition motivates Detlef and Christiane F. to frequent the Bahnhof Zoo train station. A man who adopts his deceased best friend's mantra, "accept the good," and is played by Benicio del Toro, has this condition in the film Things We Lost in the Fire. In Bad Education, Juan is revealed to have exploited Ignacio suffering from this condition in order to murder Ignacio. As a result of this condition in another film, Marion goes to work for Big Tim and Harry Goldfarb's arm is amputated. Allison, who has this condition, notices that her daughter Dawn has died, while Mark Renton tries to overcome this condition in Edinburgh in a 1996 Danny Boyle film. For 10 points, identify this condition that is the subject of Requiem for a Dream and Trainspotting.
Drug addiction?
Prompts.
Like being addicted to cocaine?
No.
Oh.
Opium addiction.
No, it's heroin addiction.
Oh.
Yeah.
Alright, so what's the final score?
Final score 380, 150.
Good game.
I did twice because of this.
I think one.
You had to ball you that.